Hey everyone, it's Phil. I'm in Kawasaki. It was a 15-kilometer run down this way this morning, and it was a nice run, and I just had lunch. Kawasaki is a nice city with a lot of interesting activities. It's a mellow town. It's kind of affluent in many ways. So if you ever get a chance to get to Kawasaki, it's worth checking out. Anyway, today I wanted to talk a little bit about the concept of faith. Recently there's been a book written called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, which I thought was an interesting title. Christians are going to have to decide whether or not faith is a vice or a virtue. In the Bible, it says faith is a virtue. Many Christians believe that you must believe in spite of there being little or no evidence. That has been changing recently. Many Christians are now saying that Christianity is rational and that belief in Jesus is a rational belief. That seems very disjointed and unfamiliar when compared to the biblical account of faith. Perhaps you recall there was one situation where a man had a sick boy, and he came to Jesus asking Jesus to heal his son, and Jesus says, "Go thy way, your boy has been healed. Do you believe me?" And the man responds to Jesus, "Lord, yes, I believe. Help thou my unbelief." In other words, yes, I believe you, but please give me more belief to believe you. How ridiculous can you get? You're asking the very person you're doubting for more belief so you won't doubt in that person. It doesn't make any sense at all. So there's nothing to conclude but that faith must be irrational. According to the Bible, then, faith is an irrational belief, since the man was invoking the very target of belief, that is Jesus, for more belief. I don't think he was asking for more evidence. The passage says nothing even remotely close to that, but rather that simply he was asking Jesus to help him get over his doubt. Well, the fact is, some doubt is rational. If there's not accompanying evidence, then that doubt is rational doubt. Rational belief is belief that maps to the balance of evidence. If you have too much doubt below the balance of evidence, you're irrational. If you have too much belief above the balance of evidence, that is commonly called faith, then you are irrational. Belief, to be rational, must map to the degree of the available evidence, the degree of the available balance of evidence. In other places in the scriptures, it clearly shows that faith is not even remotely close to anything rational. For example, Jesus clearly blesses those who believe on less evidence. So, doubting Thomas is an icon of the scriptures in that he doubted the resurrection. And Jesus arrives on the scene and says, "You believe because you've seen. Blessed are those who believe who have not seen." So here Jesus is blessing those who have not seen yet believed, rather than blessing the person who believed upon evidence. So biblical faith is clearly not rational. However, there's a trend these days to pervert this and to claim that biblical faith all along was rational. I think this is distorting scriptures, and it's a good attempt to bring the Bible in line with the growing rationality that exists in society these days. The rational mind knows that the concept of biblical faith, believing in such things as a resurrection based on the word or the testimony of people who lived 2,000 years ago, whose word has been passed on by word of mouth and then passed on through scriptures. So the only thing we can conclude is that biblical faith is irrational, it is nonsensical, it has no place in the mind of anyone committing to rationality. A commitment to rationality is fundamental to any honest inquiry in what reality is. So, some theologians these days are suggesting that instead of the word faith, we should be using the word trust and trying to bring that word trust more in line to rational thought. That is, mapping our beliefs to the evidence. I think they're a bit too late in the game. It's not possible to honestly interpret the scriptures in these ways. So, faith, at its very core, is irrational. Because it's irrational, it has no place in the mind of a person who is honestly seeking truth. So, the fundamental problem with Christianity is at its core is the concept that faith is essential for salvation. This is not only something specific to Christianity, it is also a fundamental aspect of most religions. If you can get the common person believing that faith has some type of legitimacy or is a virtue to some degree, you can make that person believe anything. So that is the first step in most religious belief systems. You try to get the person to assume that faith is a legitimate concept. And subsequent to that, you can throw anything at them and you can make it believable. Because you start first with the assumption. For example, you start with the idea that Jesus is real. And you get that person to sense, perhaps emotionally, that there is some substance behind the proposed relationship between them and Jesus. And because they feel something emotional, something they might call spiritual, then that legitimizes the notion of a relationship with Jesus, rather than first assessing whether their emotions or their spiritual feelings are actually indicative of a relationship with an imaginary or at least invisible being, this being Jesus in this case. I don't think it is. So it's very clear that most religions, and especially Christianity, promote Christianity to children. If you can capture a child's mind by suggesting faith is virtuous, without first teaching that child rationality, concepts of logic, without first equipping the child to think rationally or think clearly, then you have chained that child to your ideology for life, probably in most cases. And I think this is true based on the number of children who are indoctrinated as children at a young age in various countries and inevitably stick to the faith of their childhoods. Muslim children remain Muslims. Christian children remain Christians. This is evidence that children, once indoctrinated into the notion that faith is a virtue and then tenets of a particular faith, seldom leave because they have a feeling. They're basing their faith on the feeling that they have accepted something that is real because it feels real. However, those who first assess their psychological natures and assess their cognitive biases and possible logical fallacies are immune to this type of faith. And I think it's very clear that faith is a bankrupt concept. It is not a virtue. It is in fact a vice that deserves no respect. So the conclusion is, abandon faith. It does you no good. It is not a foundation for anything, and is certainly not a foundation for accessing reality.